All right. I apologize that we are getting started. I guess only about 1 minute late. We were right down the road at another meeting, and we wanted to make sure we got here on time to this very important hearing. Before we get started for the hearing, if the members could introduce themselves, starting from my left, Representative Rigby, and we can go from there.
Good afternoon, Representative Jim Rigby, Cambria, Somerset County's 71st District.
Good afternoon, Representative Eric Nelson, Westmoreland County, 57th District.
John Lawrence, Chester County.
Josh Kale, Beaver, Washington Counties.
Representative Martina White, the 170th Legislative District here in Northeast Philadelphia.
Clint Owlett, Tioga County and half of Bradford County.
And good afternoon, my name is Craig Statz, representing the 145th District in neighboring Bucks County.
And online we also have Representative Administrator Delosier, who, if anyone online would like to participate or ask a question, please raise your hand, give us a text, and we'll take care of it. This is Representative White's district, and I see your beautiful district office right across the way here. Thank you for having us here in this district to talk about this very important issue. If you'd like to make some opening remarks, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairman Kale. And thank you very much to the Policy Committee for coming here today to my district to talk about school choice. As many of you know, I've been fighting to give parents greater freedom in choosing a school that works best for their children instead of being trapped in a one-size-fits-all education system that unfortunately has been failing our children for far too long. It's been difficult and challenging, but we have made major progress, and there are still some obstacles that remain. But to better understand the struggle that parents are facing and experiencing across our Commonwealth, in particular here in Philadelphia, the House Republican Policy Committee has decided to host this hearing today, and I look forward to hearing from the various testifiers. Just me personally, I have received phone calls from parents across my district who are stuck on wait lists, frustrated with the school lottery systems that they apply for year after year, but lose out on access to the school of their choice. I've heard from families who send their children to private schools while carrying the burden of Philadelphia's onerous school taxes, essentially paying twice to get their child a quality education. And I've even heard from parents concerned that their children are trapped in failing schools that aren't providing the curriculum that's necessary for their child to reach their full potential. All of you should know that school choice allows parents to redirect state-funded education scholarship dollars towards the school and educational environment that aligns best with their child's learning style, interests, and needs, instead of a government-decided one, size-fits-all option. School choice allows students to access a more personalized and effective learning experience, which leads to improved educational outcomes. And I'll just finish up by saying, while we all have a duty to continue to support and improve our traditional public education system, the budgets that I voted on do this, but it is also true that we have a duty to help the children that are trapped in consistently failing schools and underperforming schools, but provide them a greater option to parents so that we can all work together to help their children reach their full potential. School choice and being able to move funding to help those parents do that, allowing them to be able to move those funds to whatever school they so desire that works best for their child, I think can lead to better outcomes for our children. Thank you so much, everyone, again, for being here today and helping us have this conversation. It's so truly important for the challenges that our children are facing across the Commonwealth.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative White. I appreciate your leadership on this issue, and school choice has been an issue that our caucus has been advocating for, you could probably say, decades. And if there's one area in Harrisburg where the status quo needs changed more than education K through 12, I'm not sure where it is. It is a system right now, a 19th century system that just is not working for today's children. And I know we get caught up in political fights over this issue, but this issue really shouldn't be political. This is about kids. It's about parents making choices. It's about doing what's best with our resources so that we can have the best outcome for children wherever they are, regardless of what their zip code is. And sometimes that gets lost when we have these political battles over it. And when the governor was for it, and then he vetoed it, and now he's against it again. I think it's really important for us to all remember that this is about kids, and kids are suffering, and families are suffering, and we can provide relief through sound policies if we actually deliver on what we promise to do. So I'm very pleased today to have two sets of testimony, two sets of testifiers here today. Our first set is from our schools, is the name of the group, and it is Mr. Andrew Brady. He's the president of West Catholic Preparatory High School. Joy Converse, the former public school teacher, and Jaslyn Vasquez Gonzalez, a student at St. Joseph's University. Mr. Brady, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Brady, president of West Catholic Preparatory High School in West Philadelphia. I want to express my appreciation for allowing me to be part of this hearing. In our nation and in our state, and more importantly in our city, we have a massive educational problem. First, I want to be clear. I'm not anti-public or anti-charter school, nor am I anti-union. I think that too often this conversation devolves into having to pick a side. I'm on the side of children who urgently need access to quality education. The remedy for our educational challenges is going to require a Herculean effort from legislators, public, charter, and private schools, all united in the pursuit of improving the education of the young people we serve. I understand the significance of a program like the Pass Scholarship Program because they are designed to aid children from households like the one I grew up in. I was raised in Southwest Philadelphia and for much of my life lived in a single-parent household. My father worked 2 jobs to provide for our family. By day, he was a glazer, a proud member of Local 252, and by night, he worked minimum wage at U.S. Air loading bags. While we didn't have much, I was lucky that my father was able to afford to send me to West Catholic for high school. My high school education altered the trajectory of my life, eventually leading me to choose a career in education. Today, I sit before you embarking on my 16th year at West Catholic Prep. Our school has stood as a symbol of promise, hope, and stability for its students and families throughout its century-long history. Since its founding in 1916, it's been committed to serving the communities of West and Southwest Philadelphia. Our student body is 97% people of color, with a median family income just below $40,000. We believe that every young person deserves a high-quality education, regardless of their zip code or socioeconomic status. While our tuition is $9,400, our generous supporters allow us to provide over $2 million in tuition assistance annually to our 450 students, with about $1 million coming from EITC and OSTC funding. However, affordability remains a significant challenge for families in our community. Our hardworking parents want the best for their children, knowing that at West Catholic, their child will be part of a safe, loving environment where they will receive the type of education needed to prepare them for the next step in their lives. But sadly, each year, many families are not able to enroll their child due to cost. When I speak with these parents, I can feel the sadness and desperation. They aren't asking for much. They just want to be able to send their child to a school where they will be safe and given a quality education. Every June, I have the privilege of sitting on our stage at 45th and Chestnut, witnessing our seniors as they walk across that stage for the last time as graduates. Over the course of 4 years, I've observed these young people and the impact that a high-quality education has on them. They depart with a sense of self-belief, an understanding of their talents and passions, and most significantly, a deep appreciation for the importance of serving others. I leave that graduation filled with hope, because these are young people not only striving to excel academically, but I know they will become a positive force for change in the world. When the discussion around past scholarships gained momentum this summer, I felt a sense of excitement, not just because of what it could mean for schools like West Catholic Prep, but because it finally felt like we were having an important conversation around something that really matters to families in our community. Communities like West and Southwest Philadelphia are too often afterthoughts, especially in discussions around education. Each and every day, I deal with families who are desperate for educational opportunities for their children, and it's time that we do something about it. This lack of opportunity for our children is an injustice, and we bear a moral and ethical responsibility to address it immediately. As we sit in this hearing today, there are students throughout the state in schools where they do not feel safe and are not able to be given the support, encouragement, and academic instruction they need to reach their potential. We have an opportunity to change this through the PASS scholarship program, and to delay that would be to betray our young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Converse, floor is yours.
I'd like to thank Josh Kale, Representative Martina White, and the members of the Policy Committee for this opportunity to testify. My name is Joy Converse, a retired teacher. My career spans 36 years, 26 of those being in public school education. Those years were quite diverse, about half spent in the Philadelphia public school system and the other half out on the main line in Delaware County. I wore many hats during those years, that of per diem sub, long-term sub, full and part-time teacher in positions such as prep or specialist teacher, kindergarten teacher, and then finally ESL teacher. However, most of my teaching experience has been in kindergarten. Based on my diverse public school teaching experience, as well as what has continued to occur in public school education since my retiring, I am an advocate for school choice and Lifeline scholarships PASS program. There are so many stories I could tell, but since time is short, we'll share some highlights. During my years in Philadelphia, I experienced overcrowded classrooms with a lack of support personnel and help, occasions of dangerous, isolated classroom situations, and often a great lack of teaching supplies, resulting in $200 to $300 of my own money spent yearly. These situations resulted in great stress, eventually affecting both my health and well-being. Fear was often also experienced for both the students' safety as well as mine. All of this eventually drove me to seek a teaching position in the suburbs. As a teacher, I had the option of applying to other school districts, whereas the parents of my students did not have the luxury of moving for their children to attend a better, safer school. Although my initial suburban public school experiences were positive ones, with fewer children in the classroom, adequate support personnel and help, as well as an abundance of classroom materials, my positive experiences began to change, with no child left behind. As a result, it was all about standards and testing, a one-size-fits-all policy. Schools became more like factories, turning out a product. Say goodbye to different aptitudes, abilities, talents, learning styles, and the multiple intelligences that exist in our students. They were being reduced to a number on a page, a test score. In order to prepare them for future standardized testing, kindergartners were now expected to start reading, which is developmentally inappropriate. Kindergarten became the new grade 1. Some 5-year-olds may be ready to read, but most are not. One such student, not yet ready to read, but seeing those who could, simply figured he was stupid and then shared this with his mom. When she shared this with me, I was heartbroken and knew I couldn't do this anymore. So decided to become ESL certified, thinking this emphasis on standardized testing foisted upon students who wouldn't be foisted upon students who are not proficient in English. But no, both immigrant and transient international students were expected to take the same English language standardized tests as their native English-speaking peers. It takes 5 to 7 years for academic language to develop. Until that occurs, students shouldn't be subjected to taking a test in a language in which they are not proficient. The score will only reflect the poor quality of their English, nothing more. But because these poor scores were assisting in pulling down the building score, meaning less money for the district, all I kept being asked was, what are you going to do to raise the scores? It was a losing battle. This teaching to the test was extremely stressful on both students and me, once again affecting my health and well-being, This eventually forced me into early retirement. Since then, much has continued to occur in public school education, affecting both inner city and suburban schools, the COVID shutdowns, as well as the teaching of ideas with which many parents, as well as myself, are not comfortable and believe have no place in the classroom. And yet parents are told they have no say. The school knows best. So unless parents can afford to send their children to the school of their choice, they're stuck. Parents are the first educators of their children. As the first educators, as well as taxpayers, they deserve to be at the table for deciding their children's education. A home address should not be the deciding factor. Although these are definitely important, there is more to education than reading, writing, math, and science. Memory is crucial, especially good, sacred memories, which can influence the mindset and future decisions in the lives of our children. Good, sacred memories cannot be forged in failing schools. I'd like to close with a quote by the character Alyosha from Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov, which became my philosophy of teaching. To create a classroom environment, the foundation upon which good, sacred memories will flourish. Quote, "You must know that there is nothing higher and stronger and more wholesome and good for life in the future than some good memory, especially a memory of childhood, of home. People talk to you a great deal about your education, but some good, sacred memory preserved from childhood is perhaps the best education. If a man carries many such memories with him into life, he is safe to the end of his days. And if one has only one good memory left in one's heart, even that may sometime be the means of saving us." Lifeline Scholarship's PASS program will enable parents to choose schools with classroom environments where good, sacred memories will flourish and perhaps be the means of saving us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Vasquez Gonzalez.
My name is Jasmine Vasquez Gonzalez, and I recently graduated from Little Flower Catholic High School for Girls, and now I'm a freshman at St. Joseph's University, and I just want to thank you all for having me here before I start. The first time I ever saw my dad cry, he was being detained by what we thought was the police. The tears that fell with such intensity and the look of regret on his face left me paralyzed. In 7th grade, I had a traumatizing year that began with ICE taking my dad. They illegally pulled us over, questioned me, and threatened to take me despite my being a citizen. The next year of my life was filled with lawyers, statements, and prison visits. If this was not overwhelming enough, it was time for me to pick a high school. My mom was left with 3 kids and piles of bills that she had to pay all on her own, despite my dad being the income earner. At this time, my mom made one thing clear to me. If I could not find a way to pay to go to the high school of my choice, I was going to have to enroll in the public school in front of my house, which was notorious for fights and ongoing altercations. No matter how badly my mom wanted to help me, she couldn't. I knew that the fate of my high school career was in my hands, and it was all because of money. Money was restricting me from the education that every kid deserves. More than that, every kid deserves to go to a school where they feel safe, protected, and encouraged. However, in Philadelphia, public schools are progressively showing signs of violence and unsafety. My very own friends who attend public schools confirm this fear with their ongoing stories of fights and misguidance. My very own cousin confirmed this fear when she got beat and stabbed at Olney High School, another nearby public school. Luckily for me, a nun who used to work for Little Flower made as many calls as she could to get me an additional scholarship so that I could afford to go to Little Flower. I'm extremely grateful to Sister Sheila for helping me and my family because I went on to show that to excel, I just needed someone to invest in my future. I went on to be the president of Las Flores, vice president of the Spanish Honor Society, vice president of the Mata UN, treasurer of the Community Service Corps, and a member of the tennis team, National Honor Society, student government, Black Student Union, Little Flower Ambassadors, and Athletes Helping Athletes. I did all this while maintaining a 5.3 GPA, taking college classes, and working more than 30 hours my senior year of high school. I'm not bragging. Instead, I'm providing an example of what happens when somebody gives a child the opportunity to succeed. I became an active leader in my school community and an example that you are not your circumstances, but what you make of them. I was given a chance. I was given an opportunity. However, more simply, I got lucky. But there are an extremely high number of kids that will not be given that same chance or have the same luck. I can't help but wonder what would have happened to that scared 14-year-old girl if she would have had to go to a school that terrified her. Not all public schools are violent places that breed miseducated students. However, in Philadelphia, there are too many. In Philadelphia, not all public schools are failing their students, but there are too many that are. Hundreds of thousands of kids are not being educated properly, which contributes to our city's growing violence. They're not being given a place where they feel safe, so they end up in the streets where they're more likely to be put in jail or killed. I got the chance to escape the tortuous and unforgiving streets of Philadelphia, but for many students, the same culture follows them into the classroom. A lot of people ask me if I still think I would have been as successful if I ended up in my nearby public school, and I honestly don't know. But what I do know is that it is hard to excel in a place where you are more worried about surviving than succeeding. I was educated, encouraged, uplifted, and loved, and to think that I almost didn't get that because of money is honestly terrifying. But what's more terrifying than that is that there are real children right now that are facing the same situation but will not get help like me. As I look back on my high school career, I can truly say I was prepared to start my college journey because of the encouragement, education, and community that Little Flower provided me, and all I can do is hope that money does not stop any more children from experiencing that too. Lifeline scholarships could positively impact so many families and kids from a failing system. Money should not be the reason that a kid doesn't receive the education they deserve. No kid deserves to be stuck in a failing school that makes them feel scared and alone, and now with Lifeline scholarships, they won't have to. So instead of allowing kids to rely on luck, let's give them an opportunity, a chance, a lifeline. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, as the testimony was going on through this panel, we had Vice Chairman Torrin Eckert join us online, Representative Malou McKenzie, and Representative Barb Gleim. My eyes are getting a little bit worse. Representative White.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Jocelyn. And thank you both again, Joy and Andrew, for sharing your testimony today. I just wondered, after hearing what you had to say, what would it mean to the families in your school or even to your family when you were talking about the need for financial resources to support the school that worked best for you? What would it mean to have a $10,000 scholarship for those families from the state of Pennsylvania through this past scholarship? I mean, right now, you were saying, Andrew, that over, I guess, $2 million from the EITC and OSTC funds from the state are something that your school utilizes. Those funds are really heavily reliant on whether or not, a company is able to contribute towards those scholarships for those kids to get the state tax credit. But what would it mean if the state was actually providing those funds directly to the families in your school instead of, maybe the ups and downs and ebbs and flows of, say, the economy with these companies, whether or not they're able to provide scholarships? With this guaranteed past scholarship from the state, what do you think that means for those families?
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned, so we award $2 million a year in financial aid and scholarships, but $1 million is through EITC, OSTC funding. I think the challenge for us is that our ability to award tuition assistance isn't endless, right? That we have limitations in terms of how much we can raise or the amount that we can have allocated towards us through the EITC and OSTC program. We're one of the smallest high schools in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, and we have some of the largest application numbers every year, and the biggest reason for that is affordability. So it would, for the school itself, obviously, it would be an incredible opportunity. I think the most important thing is the opportunity that this would create for parents, right, who are not able to send their child to a school where they know they'll be safe, or they'll be cared for, or they'll be given a good education. That is life-changing for those kids, and I have a chance to see it every day. But I also see the desperation in those parents who want nothing more than good opportunities for their kids, which is what all of us who are parents want. We just want our kids to have good opportunities and to be able to take advantage of them. So the Lifeline program would transform the opportunities that are available to our parents, and give them the choice to put their kids in schools that they feel like are the best fit for their student and where they know they'll be loved and supported.
Thank you very much.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate all three of your testimony. You know, it was a nice panel because it's three different perspectives when we're looking at it. My first question, Mr. Brady, when you mentioned your school had 450 students, averaging $9,000 in tuition, $9,400. If a program like this would happen, how many more students would you have the capacity to take?
Yeah, I think a lot. I mean, we would have some decisions to make in terms of what we would do in our facility, but I would say to you that there would be hundreds more students that we could potentially enroll in our school, and it wouldn't be incredibly difficult to do that. The interest is there. It's the challenge for our families is affordability.
Mm-hmm. And the next part of that question, Ms. Vasquez-Gonzalez, when you were talking about your experience for people, I'm from a county that does not have a lottery system, you know, and we're fortunate to have our public schools are strong. I got 7 kids that are attending and pass through public schools. Your county is very different. Can you touch on how this lottery system works, like from a student perspective, that because there are some schools in the Philly area that do all right, and then there are some others that are very, very violent and dangerous, you know, so what happens, you know, with that lottery, and who gets to decide a student going to a good public school and a student going to a not so good public school? Can you touch on that a little bit?
Are you referring to like the lottery that like charter schools do, like, or like just like?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
because the charter schools are a public school part of that process, right?
So you want me? I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the question. I'm sorry.
Yeah. If did you, as you were advancing, did you, when you were younger, pass through that lottery system?
Oh, well, my mom tried to put me in schools that had lottery system, but they never picked me. So it was like, yeah, they never like I never got that opportunity. It's kind of just like like I said, you get lucky. If you do get picked, you get lucky, and if you don't, then you just have to like try to do your best to survive, I guess.
And so your friends that are in those more different public schools, what have some of their paths been? Like, you're on a pretty impressive path, you know, working and leadership and, you know, going to a good school now. What are some of their stories?
Well, my friends that went to public school, none of them went to college. Me, I used to work at Foot Locker. I worked at ShopRite. They kind of stayed there. They kind of like for right now, they don't really know what they're doing. But they don't. I feel like it was like the misguidance. Like they went to school and they really weren't going to school to learn. They were going to school to like try to have fun, try to distract themselves from what was going on. So now they don't really like know what to do. I talked about this before about how one of my friends who I used to work with, he went to public school, and it was like late my senior year. I was deciding where I was going to college, and I was talking to him, and he was like, he didn't know what the Common App was. Mind you, this is a senior in high school. This is probably around April. He didn't know what the Common App was, and I'm just like, I don't understand how an 18-year-old in high school was not made aware of what the Common App was, how to apply to colleges, and it's just like mind-boggling to me, like how they end up in these situations and how public schools allow them to end up in these situations.
And last question, you're doing a fantastic job, I have to say. If your friends would have had the opportunity to maybe get a scholarship to attend a different school, do you think they would have, or would they stayed, have fun, you know, how would that split have gone?
I think they would have, only because I used to have, like my best friend, she went to I went to visitation for middle school, and she had to leave visitation because she couldn't afford it, and she wanted to go to Little Flower with me, but like her parents couldn't afford it, and she always talked about how like, you know, she wanted to go to college, like, you know, have the college experience, like go to school. She wanted to, you know, go on, become a dermatologist, but when she went to high school, like we kind of separated, and she just never got like that education like that she truly wanted. Because like these kids are smart. It's not that they're dumb. Like they're smart. They're not receiving an education that's like really like fulfilling. So it's like they end up in these situations. But I feel like if given the chance, like they would take it and they would like thrive off of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Howlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andrew, I have a question for you. First off, what's your graduation rate? And talk a little bit about what a typical student, their path after graduation looks like from a student at your school.
So we don't have students drop out of high school. We'll have some students who might leave us later in their high school career for a multitude of reasons, maybe their family moves or something else along those lines. So we don't have students drop out. So our in terms of the graduation of students through high school, students that start with us as seniors and finish, it's 100%. It's the paths, most of our students head off to college or university. The statistic is typically in that high 80s to mid to low 90s each year that will go off to college. Most of them going off to four-year schools. They go to a pretty wide range. We'll have students who will go to the University of Penn, that will go to Drexel, that will go to Villanova. We also have students that will go to smaller private colleges. But they are, the trajectory that they are on when they leave us is one that is incredibly positive, and that they will have opportunities if they continue on their college path. They'll have tremendous opportunities in front of them. Yeah,
they're contributing incredibly in the community, I'm sure, wherever they land. Joy, I have a question for you. This bill has been quite controversial. Your role, you spoke a little bit about your time teaching and things like that. Help us understand why this is such a controversial piece of legislation. Why do we see such pushback on something that seems like could be so beneficial for students? I think that the quote of the day from your testimony is, "Parents are the first educators of their children." I circled that on my paper. Why is there such pushback for people that don't believe that? What would the argument be that people would maybe come to us and say why parents shouldn't be the first, and what makes you say that?
It's sad that it's just become so political instead of about the children. If we just get the politics out of the way and just focus on the children. And parents are the first educators. Whether they take that on as their responsibility or not can vary from one family to another, but that is where the child first is. And so if you do have a parent that's taken that very seriously, that responsibility that this is my child and I'm the one responsible for helping them to get an education, which starts in the home with just things you learn by living with your child and having them in your home, then they deserve to have a seat at the table. They deserve to be able to say what's going to happen with this child and where are my tax dollars going. They ought to be able to have a say in where their tax dollars are going. They shouldn't just have money taken out of their pocket and put in places that have nothing to do with what's helping their children.
Why is there such a push to sideline parents, though? Like, what's the purpose of that? I mean, you would think, they know their kid the best. I've got 4 amazing children. Obviously, my wife and I, we know them the best. Like, we know what's going to be best for them. We know their personalities. We know their learning styles. Why is there such a push to sideline those that know their kids the best?
It's hard to know. Again, I think it has something to do with politics and just an agenda that wants to be pushed. I know the union has a lot of power, and it's a power grab in a lot of ways, is what I believe.
Yeah.
That they want to indoctrinate our children. They don't want parents to be able to have a say in what happens because they want to be in control.
Yeah. Jocelyn, I have a question for you. How old are you?
I'm 18.
So I can't imagine sitting in front of a policy hearing at 18 years old, but thank you for being here. The line that I underlined from your testimony was, "I just needed someone to invest in my future." What was it like? What was the stress level when did you start going to the high school that you're at right now? How old were you when you got the scholarship?
14.
14. What was the stress level like in the home before you got that before you got that scholarship? And, then somebody invested in your future. So number one, what was the stress like, and describe that a little bit, and how would you encourage somebody who might be going through a stress situation like that, in that maybe someone would want to invest in their future?
Well, for me, of course it was extremely stressful because I was only 14. And I feel like when you're 14, you shouldn't have to be worrying about money to that extent. My mom, she didn't know what to do. She wanted me, my sister went to Little Flower, so she wanted me to go to Little Flower as well, but like I said, she just couldn't help me. And I feel like she blamed herself when it was never her fault. Like I said, my parents are immigrants. They came here with nothing so that I could be here and I could be something. And it wasn't her fault, but she blamed herself. And my dad, he wasn't even in the home at the time, so he blamed himself too. They blame themselves when like I said, it's not their fault. And it created stress between them. It created stress between me and them, me and my sister, our whole family in general, because we wanted that for me. We want that for all my siblings, but we just couldn't do it. And I feel like, what was the second question? I'm sorry.
Well, how would you encourage somebody else that might be in a similar situation that you're in, that needs somebody to invest in their future? How would you encourage them?
Honestly, I would just tell them to pray. I feel like God is a big part of my life. It's the reason that I got through so many difficult times in my life. I would encourage them to pray. And if, they're not religious, seek someone. I feel like I've had a multitude of mentors in my life, teachers that have affected me and have shaped me into the person that I am today. And I would encourage them to seek someone, an adult in their life or even a friend that can help them get through the situation.
That's great. And there are people that want to change this. And you got a group of people here today that are engaged in this. And we would love to see more opportunities and more success stories, giving people the opportunity. So thank you for being brave and being here to testify today. And thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Stats.
Thank you, Chairman Kale. And again, thank you to Representative White for hosting this very important hearing. Thank you to our panel. And yes, Jaslyn, thank you very much for sharing your story. Very impressive. My first question was really answered by Mr. Brady, so I'll go right to my second question. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about this. Does a student enrolling in a different school of their choice through PASS negatively impact the finances of their assigned public school?
So I don't live in the public school world in terms of budgets and the way in which those operate. But as a student enrolls in a private school, their family still pays. They still pay their school tax that they would pay. So my understanding is no, that it wouldn't have a negative financial impact on public or charter schools.
Anybody else like to chime in? Okay, no, I think that's good. Thank you very much, Mr. Brady.
Representative Rigby.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your testimonies. My wife, kindergarten and first grade teacher, 18 years, will resign in December. She has walked away for some of the same reasons that you have. And in my district, we do have some failing schools, and it's very concerning that we continually keep putting money into programs, and we're not addressing the real issue at hand, which is the failing schools. I believe we are ranked 8th in spending, $22,000 per student, yet our ranking in education is 32nd. So just looking at where do we go from here and how do we address this, looking for some input from the panel here, but I believe we don't do a good enough job at addressing failing schools. And we can't continually dump money into failing schools thinking money is going to make it better, because that's not the issue at hand. And you are absolutely correct. Education begins at home. the discipline that starts there, and making sure that the bedtimes are met and that the homework is done, and the reading and working with the child before they get to that kindergarten, first and second grade levels. And we see the difference in the students that do that and the families that have that. And so if you could just maybe give some feedback to that. Am I going down the right road here? Is my thinking correct that, money isn't always the answer?
No, money's not always the answer. I started teaching a very, very long time ago, and they were talking about money then. And things are not any different now. And I've been retired now for about 8 years, so not much has changed. They still say we don't have enough money. So money's not going to fix this. And the school can't do the job of the parent also. We have to start looking at children and what the needs are, and how can we meet those needs, and not just dumping money into schools, but how can we help parents to do what they want to do for the children? Or how can we help some parents who are having difficulty being parents? How can we help them be better parents? We have to look at the child first and not just dumping money into schools. And we have to get people on boards that will be in favor of children and not programs. And I think the union itself has just a lot more power and control than they should have in our schools. They do some good work, but it's just become so political. And it's just every time an election would come around, the union was telling you who you're supposed to vote for. That's not the job. Politics should not be coming into the school. It's about the children, and so much of what is being taught to children is directing them into a certain way of viewing the world through a certain political system, and that has no place in school either. So it's just been broken for so long that it's not going to be an easy fix. And I think Lifeline scholarships, I think school choice is a way to start. Eventually, if we can get school choice for all children, and if you want to send your children to a public school, fine, but if you want to send your children somewhere else, I think we have kind of outgrown what the original view of public schools was when it was first decided that children should be educated, but I think when the government steps in the way it does, it's sort of like, well, if we're going to educate your child, then we have an influence on your child. We should have power over your child. And that shouldn't be. When parents are then saying, they try to, in certain board meetings that I've watched, parents try to bring up issues of concern and they're basically shut down. They don't want to hear that. We know what's best. And that's not what public school education was ever meant to be. I don't remember things like that happening. I went to public schools as a child, and my parents were very welcomed to be a part of my education. And it just seems like something has changed, and it's very sad. And I think we need to start with these Lifeline scholarships to help give these parents somewhere where they can send their children and where their involvement is going to be welcomed and where they're not being shut down to have a say in their children's education. And it's not going to be an easy fix. I just know that.
What was surprising to me was, we talk about approximately $22,000 per student, that only 1/3 of that actually makes it to the classroom, and that includes the teachers. So the other 2/3 are going to the overhead.
Right.
2/3 should be going to the students, should be going back to the classroom where it's needed. And again, I think that's something we need to address as a body. But I thank you for your testimonies. Thank you, Chairman.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, Representative Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be brief. Ms. Converse, I want to thank you for all of the work that you did, taking your care for your students personally, the money you spent out of pocket to take care of them. My mother homeschooled me, so she's no stranger to expenses here and there. But I want to thank you for that. I saw also that you mentioned you became an ESL certified teacher. I was finishing up high school. I wanted to get into the education field, and I got TESOL certified. And moved to Taiwan, where I worked for an education foundation, where we worked in really rural communities, because in Southeast Asia, if you're not bilingual, you can't compete in any sort of job market. So they sort of have this very clear dichotomy there. And the idea was to bring teachers into these communities that could help sort of break down those barriers that not being bilingual really created. And we're seeing sort of the same thing here, where the barriers to opportunity exist because of the lack of educational opportunities that something like PASS or Lifeline would provide. You referenced the boy who thought he was stupid because he couldn't read at 5 years old when some other classmates could. My question to you is, how much have we lost, right? We know what PASS and Lifeline can do, but what are we losing? Every school year, every day that passes by, how many students like that 5-year-old, how many people, Jaslyn, like your cousin, are suffering because they're missing out. We're missing out on that individuality and the pure pursuit of either test scores or political power. What are we missing every year when we don't have something like PASS in place so that every student can have the same sort of experience that Jaslyn spoke to?
When you say what are we missing, you mean
the students that you interacted with, the students that you saw personally as you saw those, the effects of No Child Left Behind, you spoke to those changes in the classroom dynamic. How many of those students did you see their individuality kind of just lost to the checking of the box? Is that something you saw regularly? Is it something that you think we can get back, or are we losing ground every day?
Yeah, I saw it quite a bit, and I just remember one of the experiences I had. Because I was an ESL teacher, I was part of a committee at one of the schools where I was. We had this test that was called the Dibbles test. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it basically was a computerized test that really broke down the students' skill levels in reading and in math. The child couldn't go on to the next level until they had answered everything correctly. And then it kind of gave you a printout and a highlight of where the child's weaknesses were, and this is what the teacher had to focus on. And so many of our international students, the district where I was, it wasn't a large percentage of children who were coming here to stay. They weren't immigrants. They were mostly transitional. They were transient. They were here temporarily while parents were here, and then they were going back to their own country. So they had a really hard time with any kind of standardized tests. They just hadn't been here long enough to learn the English. And I had these two little boys that had come from South Korea, and they had missed when their class had to go to the computer lab to take the Dibbles test at the end of the year. So I was asked to give the test to these children in my classroom. They basically couldn't really talk, couldn't have a conversation with you in English. And yet, I actually I used Google Translate, and I wrote a little message to them that would be translated in their language to try to put them at ease that I know you're not going to understand what you see in front of you. Just do the best you can, it's okay. And the one little boy, he just sat there. I mean, you just think going to another country, and if you haven't learned that language, saying you're supposed to take a test in that language. And then the other little boy, he knew this was a test, and he literally started hyperventilating in front of the computer because he was so nervous. And I thought, why are we doing this? And I had said to my principal, they don't have enough English for this. Well, we need a baseline. And I'm thinking, what kind of baseline are you going to get? This makes no sense to me. So these are just two children that were lost, but I had a whole classroom of children that were ESL children. I mean, it was a very growing population that came into this district over the years. That's why I ended up getting hired, because they needed more teachers. And these children were just so stressed out because they knew this was a test and they couldn't do it. And you could get the PSSAs in Spanish, but you can't get them in any of the Asian languages or Middle Eastern languages. And so, these are children that, for the time they were with us, they may have learned some English, but I don't know how much they learned academically, just because of this situation. And then for this little boy, that just decided he was stupid, that never came from me. I didn't like what I was being asked to do. I didn't like the fact that now I had to have reading groups in kindergarten, and I was trying to make it as low-key and just using color codes and things for what the different reading levels were. But the kids were able to figure it out. You didn't have to tell anyone that this group was reading higher than this one. They all were able to figure it out. And so I don't know what was going through the minds of all of the children that, had to go see the literacy coach or had to go to summer school, even though they were only 5 years old, because they hadn't passed the test for where they should be reading by the end of the school year. But that's just not how we should be running education. It's about the children, and why are we forcing children into a box? If you're in kindergarten and you're ready to read, fine. If your parent wants to read with you at home, fine. But the kindergarten teacher shouldn't be asked to teach all of her children and then assessing them. And the ones who are not ready to read yet, it's not because there's something wrong with them. You can't push. You can't push these children to do things they're not developmentally ready for. And that's what was happening, and that's what drove me out. I'll just never forget it. It was the November report card conference, and this mom came in. She was actually herself studying to be a teacher. She was doing her student teaching, and she said, I have to share something with you. My son came home and told me he was stupid. And I said, what? Please be assured that did not come from me. And I can't do this. I can't be involved in the implementation of a program where some of the children in my classroom are going to think they're stupid because they're not ready to do it yet. So that's why I had to get out. And that was a lot of children. There were about 8 to 10 children that would go see the literacy coach in kindergarten, a literacy coach, because they hadn't come into kindergarten already knowing their ABCs. And that's what we were supposed to do in kindergarten, teach them their ABCs. And now if they didn't know them when they came in, they had to see the literacy coach. So there's something wrong with this program that is pushing children like this at such a young age. And it just seems like the system we have in place right now keeps saying we have to start earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier. And children need to play. There's parts of the brain that don't develop correctly unless they play. And we're losing, and that's something I would not give in on. It was a half-day kindergarten program, and the other teachers kept saying to me, I don't know how you're giving them time to play, Joy. There's just no time to play anymore. And I said, well, I'm sorry. I answer to a higher authority, and God that says 5-year-olds need to play. So they're having playtime in my classroom. And so that, and if I get called up for it, I'll take the consequences, but that's what I had to do.
Well, thank you very much for all of your efforts to celebrate their individuality in a system that wanted you to fit them all into the same cookie cutter. So thank you very much for your efforts and for all of your testimony today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative White.
So thank you for allowing me a second question here, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brady, so the Philadelphia School District currently has approximately less than 30% of their third graders at reading grade level, and only 22% can do math. When it comes to parents and being able to afford to send their child to a school like yours, when you hear those kinds of figures, what immediately comes to mind in terms of concern for the parents and those students, but then also what it means for you as a person who handles the entire school and all of those students to have access to, say, the PASS scholarship program that currently would provide those children in the lowest 15% performing schools access to, say, a program like yours?
So my first initial reaction to that is always one of just dismay, right? And not necessarily even as a school leader, but just as a person. These young people that are entrusted to our care are going to be voters. They're going to be community leaders. They're going to be all those things, and they deserve better than that. I think that. I think as it relates to the question around the PASS scholarship, I mean, look, the reality of it is that it is hard for kids to learn when they're concerned for their safety, when they don't feel safe. And I also say, too, it's hard for educators to teach when they're concerned about student safety or they're concerned about their own safety, right? And I think that the path forward for those families is for them to be able to get into a place where they feel safe, where they'll be supported, where they'll be encouraged. That experience at West Catholic transformed the course of my life. I wasn't better than the people that I grew up with. I wasn't better than those that went to public school. I just had an opportunity, and all too often that opportunity comes down to who can afford it or what zip code you were born in, and that's not fair. These are great kids with great parents who want nothing but the best for them, and unfortunately, they're being denied that right now, and they deserve an opportunity at that, whatever the pathway for that is. And right now, the conversation is around Lifeline and PASS, and that being a pathway to get those kids out of failing or unsafe schools. And I think we can't delay in this. We can't wait. These are the lives of kids that we are waiting on, and I don't think any of us would do that for our children.
Do you think that the provision in the legislation of the PASS scholarship program that restricts it to households, I think it's 250% of poverty, so about $75,000 per household, that's going to leave kids out, right? I mean, there will be families that, have children that would like to go to a school like yours, but maybe don't meet that criteria. So do you think that maybe is a provision that we should address and maybe include all students or all kids? Do you think that that's something we should consider?
Yeah, I think, obviously there's a layer of complication, and there's politics and negotiation of all of that, right? That has to take place. I think the first place in which this needs to be addressed is for those who can't afford to send their child elsewhere and don't have quality options that they can send their child to that are free. And where we draw the line on that threshold, obviously, it's hard for me to say, but I think if there's one thing we directly need to address, it's those that are trapped in failing schools that have no educational alternative. And where we draw the line in the legislation, again, hard for me to say, but I think it's critically important that those that feel trapped, that are desperate, that we give them hope and we give them a pathway out.
And then just one final question. Tutoring services are not part of that legislation. So right now it currently covers, tuition, books, instructional materials, tech equipment and services, uniforms, activities, dual enrollment programs, special education services, fees. But it doesn't include tutoring. And when you think about like the lowest 15% performing schools, and you just heard the statistics I provided, do you think that those types of tutoring services should be included in this program?
I think that those students, it is incredibly hard, especially as a high school, when students arrive behind grade level. It is a Herculean challenge to get them caught up in that gap. And for some students, we could be talking about they're 2, 3, potentially 4 grade levels behind, right? In some schools that might be accepting those students. So I think to do that in a traditional, school schedule, to essentially to try and accomplish 6 years of education in 4, which is what we have at the high school level, is incredibly difficult. And I think if there is an opportunity for families that can seek tutoring or support to ensure that their kid will be on target or at grade level, I think that will be what's best for the kid and what's best for that family, but also will be what's best for our society, for our city, for our state. So yes, I do.
Thank you very much.
Just a couple things. I'd like to ask one question as well, but I do think it's important that we note that the legislation that we advocated for, that we passed, that was vetoed, was not taking any money, zero money from public education. When that was vetoed, $100 million was taken away from kids in struggling schools. It had nothing to do with getting more money to public education. It was just taking away kids' opportunity, really hope for struggling families, just taking it away flat out. So I think it's important because that question was asked earlier, like, does this impact schools? Actually, is a windfall for school districts because they still get the money while kids are going other places. So they're getting paid for not performing a service. So the whole semantics of that is just remarkable. Jaslyn, I don't have a question for you. I just wanted to comment to you, and I don't know you. This is the first time I've met you, first time I've ever heard you. Your story is remarkable. And, you know, when I was 18 years old, I was almost literally still dragging my knuckles. And to have you here testifying with the adversity that you had to face, the level of fortitude that you've already shown in your life, I mean, you have the seeds of greatness planted in you. And it's really impressive to see you here and to see you doing so well. Thank you for being here. Mr. Brady, I have a question regarding just kind of a technical issue, and if you don't know the answer, we could find it somewhere else, I'm sure, but I'd be curious to hear. I believe that it might take 2 years, but I believe that eventually we are going to get these programs in place, and eventually there is going to be choice for parents, and we will continue to advocate that, and we're going to be successful because it's the right thing to do. But once we do, I think for places, in particular more in regions like mine, although Beaver County does have a pretty robust private school system, but there are a lot of places that don't have private schools. What's the process like to start a private school? Is it cumbersome? Is there things that we can do to help? Is there ways to make it more efficient? Because once these types of programs go into place, you would think there will be more of a market, as it were, for that type of activity.
Yeah, so I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. I mean, so look, I'm a president of a school that's been around since 1916, so it's been around for much longer than I have. So I would say my understanding of starting schools, there is a certain degree of challenge, especially in places like Philadelphia. I think the larger challenge in places like Philadelphia is the financial model in many neighborhoods, maybe where private schools might be needed most, doesn't make sense. The financial model that we have at West Catholic, nobody would tell you it makes sense. We are a philanthropic model. It's not tuition driven, right? And so when people look to start private schools, they often don't look to start them from a place where philanthropy will be the driving factor for, you know, again, our families pay a lot in tuition, but philanthropy is a bigger portion of our tuition budget than familial tuition is. So, but yeah, I think it's cumbersome. I think the greater challenge for all of us in schools is going to be hopefully when this program gets online, is the mechanisms and the way it will work. And a thing I've been paying a lot of attention to is how much burden is this going to place upon families. Many of the families we talk about that that might benefit from this the most also have a lot of things going on in their lives, right? And if the mechanism for a family to benefit from this is cumbersome, then those that we need to help the most will participate the least. So, yeah.
For the charter school process, I know it's a different world. There's a board, and that charter board, in my estimation, has been taken over by people that aren't interested in education of children, and then it was subsequently sandbagged by the last administration where spots weren't filled, and it turned into a total disaster where charter schools weren't being approved even though they were really needed in certain areas because of this cumbersome process. I'm not aware of the private school process, but is there a certain approval process like that? Is there a board involved? And if you can't answer, we can get the answers.
So any school has to receive some level of certification. I don't believe in the private school world there is a board similar to the Philadelphia School District Board that you're speaking of, I'm assuming. So I don't believe the process has that level of oversight, but I don't believe you can open a school, tomorrow without receiving any sort of certification or following Department of Education guidance.
All right. Thank you all very, very much for testifying here today. Truly appreciate it. We're going to get our second panel up. We'll give you a minute to collect your things, and if we could rotate to the second panel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, our second panel, testimony from our homes. We have two parents, Kima Brewington and Shannon Mitchell. Ladies, if you could keep your testimony to a couple minutes, and then we will ask for, we'll have questions and answers, and we'll go from there. So we'll start with Miss Brewington. Or if we'd like to start with Miss Mitchell, that's fine too. Whatever works for you guys. As relaxed as can be, this environment is.
Yes. Hi, my name is Kima Brewington. I'd first like to start off by saying I am a diehard Democrat. I'm a diehard Democrat. I live in the inner city. I am very active in my community, and I wanted to get that out the way to show that this goes beyond politics. This is something for our children. So my family's high school journey starts out in September of 22. I took my very excited tweens to the Philadelphia Convention Center in Center City for the high school fair. We walked into a jam-packed room of stands feeling a bit overwhelmed. Immediately, you would be able to point out the most sought-after schools, right? So these schools had long lines, also by the eager parents shuffling, firmly guiding their children to the front of the line to speak with the representative. I called them super schools. In contrast, you immediately notice the not so sought after schools by the empty booths and school rep filling his time catching up on his Twitter feed. Super obvious, right? During the convention, we were told that the school district of Philadelphia was implementing a brand new system. Philadelphia School System District School Selection, meaning you were no longer able to apply directly to the school. No, you would have to apply via the school district's new system. The district would the district would look at your grades or your child's grades, test scores, and other contributing factors, such as behavior. After all was computed, you would have access to the public schools the district said your child was eligible for. This was great for my daughter. Straight A's, good behavior, good test scores. However, her twin brother was a bit of a different story. Like so many children in America, her twin brother, my son, suffers from ADHD. Now, anyone who knows a child who suffers from ADHD understands their journey is not so cut and dry. It would take more than looking at their grades, test scores, etc., to get a good picture of who they are as a student. However, with the district's new system, my son's application wouldn't even reach a super school. My daughter, on the other hand, would apply to Kappa. I don't know if anyone knows what Kappa is, but it's a very sought-after performing arts school with great academics. Students must audition to make it into this super school, and I'll touch back on that. So out of the whole fair, there were 2 schools. Mind you, there were hundreds of schools there. There were 2 schools that would give my son a chance. They were indeed super schools. However, they were private super schools. And this is the part in the journey that led me here speaking in front of you today. The upcoming circumstances would mold me into a genuine believer, a supporter, and advocate for the PASS scholarship program. So after a lot of work, we finally secured a spot for my son in the Catholic school, Newman Goretti. Then the real anxiety kicked in. Tuition was about $10K per year. I spent many hours scouring through the internet in search of some type of grant, aid, scholarship, something. I applied to several outside organizations. All were at capacity. So I got a no for everyone from every organization. Like myself, there were hundreds of families out there searching for the same thing. Remember, I started out last year, fast forward now to June of this year, and I'm almost having an anxiety attack. I'm like desperate. The tuition fees were now becoming due after the $2,000 that the school awarded me, which was great. The monthly payments were, you ready for this? It was $732 a month. I remember just breaking down crying one night, not knowing how I was going to pay for these fees. Just the thought of my child going to the neighborhood public school made me cringe, and that's South Philadelphia High School. I'm raising a little black boy here. This little black boy has come to the fork in the road. This means the slightest deviation from the positive path could be the demise of his future. Linking up with the wrong crowd, birds of a feather flock together, meaning it only takes one thing, one person, to throw away years of hard work. Now, this could happen with any child. However, I'd hope we'd all agree that some children are more at risk than others. Just in the nick of time, by chance, Sharon and Mark from the Ed Choice Foundation, Guy from the Commonwealth Foundation, and Dave from Blocks, I was able to secure a beautiful grant for my child. God is truly great. He may not come exactly when you need him. However, he's always on time. But just in case, that's just one case. What about the other scholars whose only choice is to go to the neighborhood school, right? What is going to that school mean? What if going to that school only means that child harm? Only perpetuating one bad cycle after another. Well, I feel the PASS scholarship will be that miracle in preventing this from happening. What will it take for every child to benefit from this legislation? Exactly what brought us here today: education. Parents must be educated on the process. Every parent cannot have another full-time job scouring the internet for grants. They may be tied down on rigorous job schedules, they're not so good at tech, etc. There has to be a mass parent education campaign, not by politicians, no shade, but by parents just like themselves. Someone they can call up and say, hey, I'm stuck in the process here. Can you help me? That tangent that they can just reach out. Just whom they can relate to. So I would also argue that we need to start letting children young children be more active in their own education. Let's allow parents must attend and turn it into parents are strongly encouraged to attend. How many times has a young person this year alone helped you with something tech related? They can handle their business, trust me. So we must start thinking about our children as a whole. We must all work together cohesively to give every child at least a fighting chance, right? That success is the longevity of our country. In conclusion, my daughter did get into Kappa, not because she auditioned, but because there was no proper training for the school's counselor when they did receive the students who made the cut from the school district. The administrative counselor stated, I was handed a big spreadsheet with hundreds of names. I'm certain the one I was supposed to choose was above or below your child. Still, she honored her entry into the school. My child was the only person in the history of Kappa to get in without an audition. And I only always think about that other child who was just left out. And so what's so different about that system to this one? I would argue this one is a lot better. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mitchell.
So I wrote a speech. Just going to basically give you
I think is the microphone on? A little green light needs to come on. I'm sorry.
I'm just going to give you a brief
That would be great, yeah.
So I'm a mom of three. I have three tiny tornadoes, I call them. My oldest is 11 going on 16. I have a son who is 9 going on 17. And I got a daughter who is 7 going on 21. I'm also a wife of a Philadelphia police officer and also an Army veteran. When my husband was going through the police academy, we found out that our son, at the time was 3, he was diagnosed with autism. So he has anxiety attacks. He literally, at one point, bit off all his nails. So we went through the whole process of trying to find a school that would fit best for his ability. And we have 2 schools in our neighborhood. My zip code's 19114, so I have Thomas Home, and I also have John Hancock. John Hancock is basically the blue ribbon school to send your child on the spectrum. We were turned down. The reason why we were turned down to John Hancock is because half of my house belongs to their zone, and the other half belongs to Thomas Home. So, unfortunately, we had to go to Thomas Home. My son is 9 now, still can't write, still can't read, still cannot say his ABCs. He can only count up to 20. Then COVID hit, so that was a big disaster right there. So they wanted us to have him in front of a computer screen. Now, telling a child on a spectrum to sit in front of a computer screen is like giving a cat a bath. He wouldn't sit. You had to basically plead, and you had to basically take all his toys and put him in front of the computer screen. It was just like pulling teeth with this child. Unfortunately for me, I found ways to get him to sit in front of the computer screen, like bribery with chocolate and chocolate milk. And, you know, if you sit here for 5 minutes, I promise you I'll go get that toy for you if you just sit there for 2 seconds. Fast forward, my daughter, who is 7, she was diagnosed at age of 2. Now, she's on the total opposite end of the spectrum. She doesn't talk. She is not potty trained. She is a flight risk. She also is a Houdini. She escaped our house 17 times. So we had to replace locks in our doors. We had to replace, we actually had to build a fence around our yard because we live right behind John Burns Golf Course, and she can easily go over to the fence, and we would never find her. So I was told, same thing, you can't go to John Hancock. Sorry, you can't come here. You don't live in our zone. Sorry, see you later, have a nice life. So we had to send her to Thomas Home. Still to this day, she cannot read, she cannot write, she can't barely speak 17 words. So as a parent on a spectrum of any child, not hearing your daughter say mama, dada, or mama, pop, pop, or saying other things where my son can literally speak little words. We were told by his speech therapist to replace his tonsils, well, take out his tonsils because his tonsils are the reason why he can't talk. I took him to 7 ENTs all over the place, in Philadelphia, Delaware, Bristol, anywhere I can possibly think of. And they all said, it's not his tonsils, it's just the teacher. My daughter, she has a communication device, which I refuse to use because I know that child can talk. I basically told the speech therapist I'm not using the device for her. Why should she use the device for her? Why do I need to? She's like, well, it's easier for us to teach her how to talk. Well, no, it's not. It's basically the things talking for her. So over the summertime, I actually had 7 therapists, 7 out of my pocket. Like I said, my husband's a police officer, so our health insurance is pretty good. But we still had to pay out of pocket close to $300 for these therapists to come out and help my kids, to teach them, and then teach me how to teach them. So, I mean, I know sign language. I know how to interpret my child's mood swings. I know how to see how when she's having an anxiety attack. I know when she's covering her ears, I know that something's going on, and I know with my son, when he has his anxiety attacks, I know what to do. I know quick, get them out, let's go, let's get this done. I had no help from the Philadelphia School District, none whatsoever. There were talks where I can actually put them in private school, but we all face it, private schools don't have that resources for children on the spectrum. There's just no help. I'm not blaming the teachers whatsoever because I know that they are given what they can be given. My daughter is currently in a classroom full of six kids with 2 aides and 1 teacher. So I am basically at my hands and knees at this point praying that I can actually get her to at least say 18 words by the end of this week. I'm not like I said, not faulting the teachers because I know they are hardworking people. I get it. But for me, it's very difficult. I see kids, my daughter, my oldest, she's perfect, straight A student. She's a 6th grader at St. Catherine of Siena. Straight A student, her grade point average is a 99. That's because I actually get help. I pay out of pocket again for tutoring, extra tutoring, and all this fun stuff. But my other 2, it scares the crap out of me. I'm just gonna flat out straight tell you, it scares the crap out of me because I don't know what's gonna happen after they get out of this program, this MS program. I don't know what's gonna happen do I have to find another high school, which I don't even think there's enough high schools out there that have these programs. Do I have to move outside the city in order for my kids to get the best education? Do I have to move out of state? I mean, this is what I think about. I go to sleep thinking about this. It makes me sick every time. I'm also afraid that my daughter, like I said, she doesn't speak. She can't communicate. The only time she can communicate is if she pulls your hand to wherever you need to put on. She can't tell me, oh, this teacher hit me, or this person hit me, or there's no communication. And I'm being told by speech therapists, I'm being taught by different teachers in the world telling me this child's not going to speak. Well, now she's up to 16 words because not only it was me and my husband, it's also because I actually hired extra help. And like I said, I didn't get any help. I don't get any help. I do everything on my own. I'm blessed to have Google because Google is probably my #1 go-to place to go. And Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers, I know it's probably like the biggest, that's the only things that taught me how to deal with children on the spectrum to get them to actually learn because like I said, these kids are being forgotten. I see a lot of parents crying every day because, their children are going to go through a system for what? For what reason? They're just going to come out and not know anything. And they know their kids can, progress. I mean, there's a lot of successful stories out there, the children that actually got that chance, that got that, that ability to go out and say, hey, I can get a job at, a bookstore or, all these other places. So I know I'm rambling, but I'm very, it's frustrating. It's very, very frustrating for me because, like I said, I had two. I had 2 kids on the spectrum. It's not easy. It's daily. I mean, this is what I lived right here. This is my life right here. And communications with the doctors. And this person, my daughter takes 2 types of medicines, and then my son takes 3 different types of medicines. I wake up every day wondering, am I going to make it? Am I going to be able to do this all by myself? Because God forbid, like I said, my husband's a police officer. Can I do this by myself 24/7 without any help from teachers, doctors, or anything of that nature? So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative White?
Well, I just want to give you ladies absolute, just a lot of thanks and gratefulness on my end for what it is that you've done to raise your family and raise your children under such incredibly difficult circumstances. And, while today's panel will be asking a lot of questions, it's one day in your life where you're advocating for kids. I know you do it every day for your own children, but you're advocating today for kids all across Pennsylvania that are going through similar situations. And I just want to say thank you. For Mrs. Mitchell, I just want to thank you and your family in an extra special way because your husband is a law enforcement officer, and that is, just an incredible task to be in an environment to be in today's day and age. But just want to say thank you for your family's sacrifice there and service. I do have, just a few questions for you both. One of the questions I have is, in every other part of the state in this Commonwealth, families get to elect their school board members. And in Philadelphia, we don't. They're all pretty much appointed. So do you think that there's something to be said about having people who you've been able to select represent you on the school board to be your voice and help to advocate for your family on the school board? Would you say that's something that would be of interest to you? Or I know it's maybe not what you were expecting, but certainly a question I have in the back of my mind.
I would love for somebody to advocate for me. Instead of me advocating for my child, I would love for somebody to advocate for me. I want somebody to say, you know what, this mom is suffering 24/7. She wakes up 6 in the morning and doesn't go to bed till midnight the next night. So I would love for somebody just to open their mouths and say, you know what, let's give these kids a shot. Let's give these kids with autism, any type of disability, a shot because they deserve it.
I would argue the same exact thing. I feel as though I would want that voice in the room. I would want to nominate that voice in the room to say, hey, this system is not going to work for every kid. Some kids, a lot of kids, kids with disabilities, kids who may, their journey is a little bit more intricate than others. It's not going to work for them. So what about them? How do we accommodate them? And I would definitely want to vote for someone that would definitely have my child and other children like my child in mind.
And then for Ms. Brewington, does it make sense to obviously reach out to more parents in the inner city communities who basically, what do you think is the best way to reach those parents who have state representatives, just like all of us, representing them out in the state capitol, but maybe don't agree with providing these scholarships to families like yourself?
I feel that most inner city parents, they look at things on a black and white terms. They just do, let's be honest. So they feel as though they hear something like this, and like I said, I vote Democrat. I hear it from my own representatives whom I voted for. You hear that, oh, this is a hard no because it will only it would only end up benefiting kids that's not your kids. And so further, like I said, perpetuating your own, the condition of maybe being low income or whatnot. I would say, and like I said before, it's going to take a lot of education. It's going to take a lot of that grassroots, not a politician, not someone who's going to, that comes in, we look real good here, right? But it's going to take someone who's just like a mom that comes up and says, hey, listen, girl, this is where we need to be, because this hasn't been working for us. So maybe we should try something else. And that's what they're going to listen to. Anything else that intimidates them, they'll just shy away, unfortunately.
Mrs. Mitchell, I don't know if you had heard my question earlier to another person on the panel regarding, other families, right, that maybe don't necessarily meet the $75,000 household threshold that the PASS scholarship restricts families to accessing. Do you think that that is something that, in your case scenario, you have two children that are going to private school that you're paying out of pocket for, but you're also paying for all four of your children technically to be going to a public school as well. And so do you think that having access to, say, a scholarship program that would provide your family from anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 each year would be something that would be, helpful to your family, to be able to direct those dollars toward maybe the private school that you're sending a couple of your children to, or even getting additional services for your other two children? Do you think that that's something that would be helpful for your family?
I think what's going to be helpful for not just my family, but families on any child with a disability is just giving the kid a chance. Like I said, my daughter goes to St. Catherine of Siena. She's a 6th grader. And when we were going through the process of trying to get my son into the St. Catherine's, I was basically told, no, you can't. We can't handle him. He's too extra is pretty much how, I won't say, they said something else, but it was basically, your child's extra. He has that extra chromosome. And if it was up to me, I would love to have, I would pay the extra money just to send my child to a Catholic education, and they get the education that they deserve. Because like I said, my daughter's far along. My son and my youngest are, we're basically teaching my kids, and we're teaching them how to talk. We're teaching them how to write their names. We're teaching them how to just to say my telephone number, because God forbid if someone takes my kid, or somebody, if my daughter decided that she wanted to do a Houdini act and get out of my house, she wouldn't be able to communicate with any of us. She wouldn't be able to, say her name. She wouldn't, granted, we have the Angel Care, which I also have at a couple of the police districts. My daughter's picture, we update it every month, because that's how scared we are. But if there was an little extra money to give these kids a fighting chance to actually learn, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would give these they just deserve a chance. Like, they really deserve a chance. And I hate to say it, they're just basically being pushed aside. It's pretty much what it is. It's pretty much, they don't have enough resources to teach these kids. They don't have enough teachers. They don't have enough aides. They don't have the books. They don't have anything. So if there's just a little extra money that these kids can actually get and actually learn something and come out of this, I would put all my money towards that. I wouldn't care if I was living in my car. I would be able to give that money towards these kids because that's what they deserve. They deserve an education.
Thank you very much.
Representative Violet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I have a couple questions for you. I appreciate you being here. I hope that the level of advocacy that you shared with us today goes out of this room and continues, because we need that. We need help for people to communicate what this is and what it's not, and really, push back on some of the lies. You spoke about that, because I think it's out there. We hear it. It's frustrating that people feel like they need to lie about something in order to kill it, which is, the day and age we live in. But I appreciate you being here, and hopefully you can help us advocate for this program, because I believe it's important and it helps a lot of kids. We've been working at this for a number of years, and last summer when the governor spoke in favor of Lifeline scholarships, it was exciting for us, and we thought maybe this was the year we could see something like this happen. And we went through the process. I won't bore you with all the details, but it ends up being vetoed this past summer. Something happened over the 4th of July weekend. I'm not sure what it was, but we were all good to go. It seems like things were moving in the right direction. 4th of July weekend, it dies. I just wonder if you could both speak to what were some of the emotions that you felt. I know how I felt about that, the excitement of being able to work on the project, work with the governor's office to try to come up with something that would, work for everybody. What were some of the emotions that you guys were feeling, when that happened this summer?
So I got the news from Sharon of Choice Ed. I felt defeated at first, and then just an overwhelming sense of desperation. What am I going to do now? And then my son, like, he has ADHD, but he's very intuitive, so he's sensing these. It's like, am I going to this school? Am I not? He knows he doesn't want to go to Southern, and so I'm trying to hide it from him, and I'm trying to find the resources, and it was just an overwhelming sense of anxiety. Sleepless nights, crying, just the sense of the unknown, and me thinking about September, if I just have to walk into that school and say I have to enroll my child into Southern, and I know he would just be devastated, right? He would just be devastated. And so, yeah, just an overwhelming sense of anxiety on all ends.
I have to agree. I was defeated, but at the same time, I put my big girl panties on. I started Twittering. I started contacting all the moms on where I'm part of a group, Moms for Autism. I texted them, and we all just came together and were like, nope, not gonna happen, not gonna happen. God forbid. I mean, I guarantee you probably all have children, and they don't know what our lives are like. They only see it through a glass. They're not living our lives. So a lot of the moms and a lot of the dads, grandparents, anybody we could possibly think of, we're like, nope, not happening. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this now. We're gonna start speaking up for these kids, and we're gonna start speaking up for the parents, because, like I said, we're all defeated. We're just basically at the point of breaking it to no return. But at the same time, we were like, we can't break. We can't break down because our kids need us. So we're the advocates for these kids, and we're always going to be the advocates for these kids, even before they even, move on in life, 18, 20, 25, whatever. I'm still going to be advocating for my 2 kids. I'll be on my deathbed probably still advocating for my kids. But yeah, we spread the word. It's, I hate to say it, but Twitter and Facebook and Instagram are the biggest. Google, yeah. So that's what.
Well, I appreciate that, and we need you to continue to advocate. And I don't feel like the issue is dead. I think that we're going to continue to work on this. I think it's important And I think your advocacy is going to be what's going to take this over the edge. It's what it's going to have to be. But there are a number of us that are trying to get this done because it's the right thing to do. My last question would be, speak to the need of this. I mean, parents in the region of the world that you live in. I live in Tioga County. We have more cows and pigs than people. Different world, totally different world. But so what they would be advocating for is probably different as far as like number one issues in life. What level is this as far as if you were to rate this as a level of an issue that parents, that you talk with and friends that you have, what level would this be? Where would it rank as far as need and interest in something that they want to see accomplished for their kids?
That's a great question. I feel as though this would be number one. It's the lack of knowledge, I feel, in Philadelphia County. I feel no matter what you say, what you agree with wholeheartedly politically, if you start talking to these mothers about their child and their child's future, they would definitely be on the side of the past scholarship, trust me. I think it would lower a lot of things. I think that, that self-purpose that we all need for our mental health. We always talk about mental health, how it's so, it's devastating everyone. It's devastating our country. So that self-purpose, I guarantee you over that next generation, that 10, 20-year good education for everyone, it would start to get better. When someone has a purpose in life, the whole community benefits. So it would definitely help. We just have to get the word out, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. That's all I have, and I agree with you. When you have that purpose and you have that drive, and really the key to that is a solid education, and that is what we're talking about. And how do we make sure that every student has the ability for that? And that is the key to success in driving that purpose forward and being able to move on in some really great careers in life. So, thank you.
Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank both of you for testifying today. It's not easy to come and testify in a public setting in front of a bunch of elected officials and share personal stories. So I appreciate that very much. I think I'm correct in saying I've been serving in the House longer than anyone else on the panel. I've been there for 14 years, which is very humbling and a great honor. In that time, I've voted for state budgets that have increased state education funding literally billions of dollars over that time. So it's a significant investment in the state budget, K through 12 education and certainly higher education as well. And in that time, we've seen test scores in a number of districts actually go down despite that additional funding. Ms. Brewington, your story about going to the convention center was I think it was very insightful. And I have to imagine it's not just, certainly not just for you, but for everyone who was there that day, the pressure, the decisions that are going to be made, and the future of your children. Really, my question for you is that what we're here to talk about is this scholarship program. If there were scholarships available, you talked about your personal story about you didn't know how you were going to make it happen. You were making different choices for different children in your own family. You were looking to go in one direction for one for the other, and you knew this was going to be the best path as you might see fit as a parent for one child and for another. And then, a scholarship opportunity became available. My question is for, the folks who the moms that you hang out with, if more scholarships were available, do you think there would be interest in that for attending the schools, to attending different schools, Catholic schools, private schools, whatever it might be? Do you think there would be interest, or do you think it'd be largely dismissed?
So it would definitely be interest. And I'm glad you said that, because the reason why I chose, well, my son was X'd out of all the other schools. So, and this is where I had my critique on the Philadelphia school system and their their school selection program, because if you didn't fit into their box, then you were just, you just had to go to the neighborhood school, unless your parents had, the funds to send you elsewhere, or to a charter school. But other than that, they told you what you qualified for. So again, I'll say, I know I speak with these mothers every day. They are very active in their child's education, but it's not, the knowledge isn't there. It's not there as far as, like, I went on a Google search, on a wild Google search, and I was going crazy. I'm like, I have to find something. Only circumstances led me here. How many moms have that chance, that roll of the die that says, okay, if I go down this Google, path, I'll find the right person? Not a lot of us. So I would just say we need advocates. We need advocates that these moms can relate to, can open up to, can share their stories with, because, public speaking isn't for everyone, so we need that personalized approach to it. And I think they would definitely, no matter what, because their children are very important to them, every one of them.
So in your view, there would be tepid interest, significant interest, overwhelming interest in applying for scholarships of this sort?
There will be overwhelming interest. Yep, for sure.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and your testimony has been fantastic. Really, my questions are kind of digging a little bit deeper into Representative Lawrence and some of what we had mentioned. I was surprised to learn just a year or two ago, again, I'm from Westmoreland County, it's over by Pittsburgh area, kind of more rural, and I'm shocked to learn that families in Philadelphia don't get to elect their school board members. And then even more surprised, in learning about that school select system, the new school select system, because there was this recent Supreme Court decision that said Pennsylvania has to revise and make sure it is equitable for all students. And a lot of people have different views of equality, but where I'm from, because your child had a discipline issue or has a disability, for them to be stamped with a red X is not equitable treatment. The absence of voice for you as parents in your child's education is really startling to me. If you could touch a little bit about being in a system, we were told that because we're not from Philadelphia, we really shouldn't concern ourselves with your business. And to me, it's almost the more people who realize what's going on, the performance of students stuck in the neighborhood school versus the super school, how would you, can you speak to the fact that those that are in charge of you and your area don't want others coming in and having meetings like this and educating people? Like, it's almost shocking to see not only that it's going on, but there is a concerted effort to prevent people from even realize it's happening. Can you touch on that?
Well, since, I have 2 children on the spectrum, like I said, when we were going through the process of trying to find a school for my son, we were already told Catholic schools, bottom, you have to send your child to a public school because the public schools are supposedly educated for children on the spectrum. I can tell you right now, they're basically saying, okay, here's a piece of paper, draw. My daughter, when we hired an ABA therapist, which is a behavior therapist. She went into her classroom one day, and my child was sitting at her desk, and she had 7 toys on her desk, not doing anything, just basically looking at the toys and playing with the toys and just, doing what? Just playing with toys. Now, at that point, she was 6 years old. So at a standard level at 6 years old, you should know your ABCs. You should know your 1, 2, 3s. You should know how to say hi, bye, mama, dada, all that stuff. My child can't even say mama, dada. I mean, I can barely get a scream out of her.
And Ms. Mitchell, that process, understand a Catholic school may not have that autism support. Some people think they do, other people say they don't. But you were told no from public schools.
I was told no from public schools too, yes.
Can you touch on that, Ms. Brington? You said your son had ADHD, and so they were told no, you're not allowed to go to this school because you have discipline issues. Is that, I just want to hear that again, because public schools are supposed to be a public system, and it seems like this select system process is about substantially unequitable.
Yes, so it wasn't so much as a direct no, you can't go here. It's the system that they implemented, and it was almost right away. Thank God we went to the high school fair, because that's how we found out about it. You had 3 schools you could choose from, and each school, the Philadelphia school system had their criteria on each one. You had to apply to those schools by October the 4th. Most people, most kids in the 8th grade, they're just settling in, if that, to 8th grade, going on 9th grade. So my daughter, she couldn't, she has, I don't know if you guys are knowledgeable about the condition POTS. It causes them to lose a lot of days of school because they're not okay on a day-to-day. Information got mishandled, and we had to do an appeal. Appeals have to be filed before December the 12th. It was so much red tape. And for my son, it was, his behavior, his grades, their C's. Well, guess what? Super schools aren't accepting those. You need A's. You need to be already passed in Algebra 1. All of these little bee stings, along the way is going to kill his chances at becoming a part of one of these great schools. So I remember him asking me, because it's funny because they went to Palumbo. The school went to Palumbo, and just for like a tour, and he wanted to go so bad, and I had to tell him, like, you don't qualify to go there. So to answer your question, it wasn't a direct no, but it was all of the little itsy bitsy, I would say, just foolish rules that they had in place that just gave that big X for a lot of kids.
My closing question is quality of life for you. We have a bunch of kids. It's tough enough getting to the middle school, to the high school, to the elementary. How is your day-to-day when you have multiple kids going to different schools in different directions? How does that work within your family dynamic? And Philly's a crowded place. Like, there's traffic everywhere. How does that even work?
I start my days at 6:30 in the morning, drop my first daughter off at school at 7:30, come back home, get my other 2 ready, get their medicines, get their backpacks ready. Then I drive all the way over to their school before 9 o'clock bell rings. I come back home. I'm probably able to eat maybe a piece of toast before I have to go and answer phone calls for doctors, therapists, and stuff like that. And then my days to get picked up starts at 1. My daughter gets out at 2:30, and then right from 2:30, I got to shoot right over to the other school to go get my other 2. They get done at 3:30, and then I come home, dinner, then we have hockey, ballet, horseback riding, and all that stuff, and then I'm back in the car, driving all the way over there. So I'm probably home by 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and I'm in bed by 12:30. So, and then I probably do a little laundry before, in between those times, just to do it all over again the next day.
I work for, I have a full-time job as well as my partner, and I would definitely, I just heard the $75,000 question come up. As I wouldn't, I don't think a lot of people understand how much inflation and things like that has really stretched the average family now. 75,000 may have seemed like a lot, 10, 12 years ago, but it's certainly, it's not. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Any other questions? Ms. Brewington, you're talking about inflation and school choice. By the end of this hearing, you might be a Republican. But honestly, that to me, and that to me is completely irrelevant to this entire conversation. Because, one thing that you touched on, and I'm just going to say a few closing remarks, and then Representative Bowlett's going to close us out here. I just have some comments after hearing all of this. You mentioned in Philadelphia the rationale for people voting against this is that it's not for you, it's for other people to get this service. And what's so striking about that is there is a real argument to be made that the school district lines that were drawn some decades ago were drawn the way they are because on the basis of race. And I know that's not how it is everywhere, but I know that's how it is in certain parts of the state, and there's certainly arguments to be made, I'm sure, in other parts of the state. And my point in saying that is now the answer is no, you can't even leave that area when there's a program that's there for you so you can get more opportunity. It is absolutely infuriating that part of the cure to the problems that we've put forth in the past over the decades is this, and it's being shut down. And I can tell you, there is no policy reason for this. There's one reason. There's one reason why programs like this don't pass in Harrisburg, and it's because of special interests. It's because of special interest. End of story. That is it. And it's not just programs like this. We can't get any type of reform done in any large way because of that as well. And I don't blame those interest groups, to be frank. It's incumbent on us as representatives of people in our districts to look beyond that and understand what's best for our families. Some might argue that they're just doing their jobs to protect their certain interests and the status quo is working for them. But guess who it's not working for? The kids that are in struggling school districts. That's who it's not working for. And we need to understand that as legislators. I was meeting with the school administrator. And my area is much different than Philadelphia. It's much different than Pittsburgh. It's much different than Erie or wherever. I'm Western Pennsylvania, Beaver, Washington County. And I had the opportunity to meet with the administrator in Philadelphia. And he was talking to me about education in Philadelphia. And it was really the first time that I was exposed to some of the problems that are going on there. And he said to me, Josh, amongst 8th graders, we took a survey of what they expect their life expectancy to be. Amongst 8th graders, you're talking 13, 14-year-olds. The median answer was 28. Was 28. Almost half of those students thought that they were over the hill. That is outrageous. And he looked at me and said, really what this is about, it's about providing hope. It's about providing opportunity for these kids. And that is what it's about. It's about hope for struggling families in struggling school districts so that they can have a future. And I appreciate the advocacy that you all are doing. And we do need to get better at getting that message out there and so that people understand what the real reasons are behind this. And the best way to do it, quite frankly, isn't some suit like me or us up here talking about it. The best way to do it is people like you talking about it, that can talk to your communities, that can talk to your neighbors, so that we can go back to our neighbors and our communities and explain how this benefits. So I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for testifying. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for being a part of the organizations. And we are going to keep fighting for your children and for children all across this Commonwealth. So with that, One other thing. I'd like to say thank you to the painters, DC21, for hosting us here today. Very much appreciate this beautiful facility. And with that, Representative Alette, the floor is yours to close.
That was a great closing.
Well, I just want to say Representative Alette has been a leader, along with Representative White, on this issue for years. He has been advocating, Representative White have been advocating. They are two of our champions for this particular legislation, and I just wanted to give him an opportunity to close on what we're doing.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you again for being here, and thank you for your advocacy. About a year ago, I was able to visit a private school down here in the Philadelphia area, and one of the questions that I asked, what are some of the challenges that you guys are facing? And the answer was, there are probably around 10 to 12 students that will be abused on their way to school. When they're at school, they're safe, but on their way to school. And I share that story in my district, which is a totally different, scenario of challenges that we face. And that resonates with people. And those are the challenges that you guys are facing each and every day. It's the challenges that your students are facing. And I remember hearing that and thinking, giving me more engagement on this issue. About 2 years ago, I was able to make some phone calls to students actually in the Philadelphia area that were recipients of a scholarship, and to talk to those parents, and hear what that meant to them to be able to receive a scholarship, that now their kid their name was literally drawn out of a hat, and now they're going to be able to attend a different school, one that puts them on a path to success. That hit me, So for us, I believe in competition. I came from small business, and competition is not a bad thing. And I don't know what the fear is in competition when it comes to schools. I just don't quite understand that. Because who wins in competition is the student. It wins in the customer that I'm bidding, against another competitor. The customer wins because I have to sharpen my pencil to get the job, because I want the job. And I want to be able to do the work. And we are not afraid of competition as Americans, in every other aspect of life. Every other aspect, we embrace competition. We lean into it. And until we embrace that and lean into that in education, we're going to continue to see schools that just fail. And they're failing those kids in those districts and in those zip codes. And it's a crying shame that is continuing to happen. So what I'm going to do for my closing remarks, I'm going to actually turn it over to you. I didn't tell him this. He's just going to have to deal with it. I would like you, just in a sentence or two, because we don't know who watches this. Obviously, both sides of the aisle, people are watching, this topic. They are. People are engaged on this. They still are. This is still an issue that's out there. I would like you to take just a couple seconds and maybe in a sentence or two, give a closing remark as to why this is important, succinctly in a sentence or two, and why this needs to continue to be something that we engage on, and we have to fix, and we have to change, and we have to do it sooner than later. Because I believe it's going to. We all know it's going to. It's just a matter of time. We're going to get there. We're not giving up. Nobody's giving up at this table. So we're going to get there. It's just when is the question. So give us a closing remark, a sentence or two, and for those that are watching that may argue with us and want to argue with you on why this is important.
I was going to actually say something about this. I remember I saw Representative Stats ask Mr. Brady about this. I don't even think it's about a money thing. I think it's a competition thing. Up your game. Public schools, I think this will just force them. Like John Lewis would say, good trouble. And only the children benefit from that fight.
I would just like to say, kids who are on the spectrum, I'm kind of just representing them because, like I said, I got two. They deserve a chance. They deserve to learn. They deserve to, come home and do homework and, had to drive their parents crazy just to figure out one little mathematical problem. But the kids who are on the spectrum or have a disability, they deserve a chance. And every student deserves a chance. But like I said, I'm only trying to represent the kids who are on that type of level. They just need that. They just need to give a chance. They need a chance so they can succeed in life and grow up and, you know, get a small part-time job at a coffee shop or library or that nature. So I would just like to say we need a chance. That's all we deserve. We deserve a chance.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you again very much. Our next hearing, Creating Educational Pipelines to Prosperity, will be held next Tuesday, September 19th, hosted by Rep. Joe Adams at Wallenpaupack High School to discuss expanding career and technical education opportunities to Pike and Wayne counties. Until then, this hearing's adjourned. Thank you.